on my watch.
Yep.
It is. Let's do it.
You do. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'm the Town Clerk, Twyla Lysette. Thank you for joining us tonight for the Lisbon Town Council's 16th organizational meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first item on the agenda tonight is the inauguration of elected officials. At this time, are there any outgoing remarks? Oh, yes, please.
There?
Yes.
Alan Ward, Lisbon Falls, 17 Plummer. It's a little bit different from this side of the seat. Thank you. Good evening, town councilors, and congratulations to the newly elected councilors. I requested that the town clerk allow me time at the start of tonight's meeting agenda as the outgoing council chairman, time for comments from the prior council. I wish you all nothing but the best. I understand firsthand the challenges that you will face as councilors and the considerable time commitment each of you will undertake during your tenure. Though you may not always take the same side on the issues before you, you all want what you want. You all want what you feel to be best for Lisbon and the people you represent. Your strength will be in the seven of you as a combined body and the goals you as the council set for yourselves and the commitment you make to work toward them. Over this past year, a priority for us was the transition planning to the new council to build upon our progress made upon improved communication and cooperation between all departments and staff retention and recognition. We relied on a strong vice chair to take the lead on these items that you would face for this term to bridge the two councils. I encourage you to draw from his experience for the consideration as chairman for the coming year. With his knowledge of the outstanding items from 2021 and the experience of the other returning councilors, you have the knowledgeable resources for a successful year as you work towards this year's goals. Thank you for your time tonight.
Alan, thank you very much for your service, too.
Thank you, guys.
Any other remarks? Okay. So next is the reading of the results of the balloting. 3 councilors for 3-year terms were elected. Harry Moore Jr. with 1,115 votes. Ray Robichaud with 930 votes. Cliff Miller with 831 votes. 1 councilor for a 1-year term, Jason Smith with 1,736 votes. We also passed and elected 2 school committee members for 3-year terms, Kim Labby-Poisson with 1,189 votes, and Margaret Galligan-Schmoll with 1,035 votes. We elected a water commissioner for a 3-year term, Marie Hale, with 1,428 votes. At this time, would Harry Moore, Ray Robichaud, and Cliff Miller, and Jason Smith please join me at the lectern to be sworn into office?
There's homework to sign.
First homework. I passed.
Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the Constitution
and will obey the laws
and will obey the laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Maine,
and of the state of Maine,
that I will,
that I will,
in all respects,
in all respects,
observe the provisions
observe the provisions
of the Charter
of the Charter
and ordinances
and ordinances
of the town of Lisbon,
of the town of Lisbon,
and will faithfully
and will faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office
of the office
of town councilor.
of town councilor.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
earlier, and you can't back up now.
This time, would Kimberly Labby Poisson and Margaret Galligan Schmoll please come forward to be sworn into office? Take the microphone now. Raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the Constitution
and will obey the laws
and will obey the laws
of the United States
of the United States
and the state of Maine,
and the state of Maine,
that I will, in all respects, observe the provisions
observe the provisions
of the Charter
of the Charter
and ordinances
and ordinances
of the town of Lisbon,
of the town of Lisbon,
and will faithfully
and will faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office
of the office
of school committee member.
of school committee member.
Congratulations, and let me get your paperwork.
Can't do it.
Lots of fun, right? Marie Hale was sworn in at my office on November 3rd, 2021, and her certificate is already placed on file. At this time, we will move to the order of business, Order 2021-242, the election of chairman. And so, the floor is open for nominations for chair.
I'd like to nominate Don Fellows.
I'd like to nominate Fern Rochelle.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, you have a ballot in front of you. Please write the name that you would like to vote for. Find a pen. I have a couple here. Yeah. This box has gone to every town meeting and every council meeting and has been used quite a bit, mainly for electing moderators and for council chairs. So, there's your ballot in there.
For how long, Twyla?
This date on the front you can read out loud. I think there's a little
1902.
Wow, very cool.
Roger, you remember that?
Let's see. 1 vote for Fern. 2 votes for Fern. 1 vote for Don Fellows. Somebody's going to need this ballot there. 1 vote for Don Fellows. So we have 2 and 2. We have another vote for Fern. We have another vote for Fern. And the last one is for Fern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fern, you have been elected chair.
Thank you.
All right, so do you want to do the next, or would you like me to take and do the next one?
You could go ahead.
All
You're
right.
doing a fine job, Twyla.
Okay. So, let me write it down. And next is Order 2021-243, the election of council vice chairman. Nominations are open.
I'd like to nominate Don Fellows.
Are there any other nominations?
Nominate Harry Moore. We'll get you right deep into this. No, I'm sorry. No.
Who needed a ballot?
I'd like to nominate Mark Luntz.
Okay.
One more.
And so now
Actually,
you can
Got
vote.
one more.
Oh,
actually,
you wanted to nominate one more?
Mark
Okay.
Luntz.
Mark Lunt? Okay. And did you need a ballot? Does everybody have a ballot? One vote for Mark Lunt. One vote for Mark Lunt. Suspenseful, isn't it? One vote for Harry Moore. So now we have 2 and
I need
2.
my torch, right? I can put my torch out.
One vote for Harry Moore. Now we have 3 and 2. Oh, 4. One vote for Harry Moore. And 1 vote for Don Fellows. 4 to 3. Harry Moore, you've been elected vice chair.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Just no pressure.
So congratulations are in order as we head into the new year. That concludes the inauguration part of our meeting tonight. The rest of the meeting will continue at this time, where a motion to recess for a few minutes would be in order, so that your friends and family can freely leave if they wish.
I say you make a motion that we recess for 5 minutes. Does that work?
Is there a second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
7-0. We stand recessed for 5 minutes.
I'll switch places with you.
I can actually do it from over here, too. For tonight. For tonight. Yeah, that'd be fine. On your door, I'm sure. All right, here we go. Let's come back from recess. And, Twyla, could we start with the idea of roll call, please?
Sure. Councillor Moore?
Present.
Councillor Robichaud?
Present.
Councillor LaRochelle?
Here.
Councillor Lunt?
Here.
Councillor Fellows?
Here.
Councillor Smith?
Here.
Councillor Miller?
Here. And could we move forward to good news and recognition? I know there's a few people tonight that would like to present.
Good evening. My name is Ryan McGee. I'm the Chief of Police. Here next to me is Sergeant Jeffrey Pickard. And if I could have Wayne Westland, a citizen from town, come to the front, please. Tonight I want to take a moment to recognize a citizen of our community. I think it's important that we recognize citizens when they go above and beyond. And the police department and public safety couldn't do our job without the community's support and community members that go above and beyond. Take you back to earlier this year on Tuesday, January 26, 2021. You heard a familiar voice calling out to you for assistance, Wayne. The voice was that of Sergeant Jeffrey Pickard, a lifelong friend of yours who observed you across the street. Unbeknownst to you, Sergeant Pickard had responded to your neighbor's house for a young man who had life-threatening injuries sustained from multiple stab wounds. Without hesitation, you ran across the street, and you quickly and professionally started triaging and tending to the wounds to assist officers to stop the bleeding. Your background in the medical field, calm demeanor, and quick actions were greatly welcomed by all who were present. Wayne, you made a difference and helped save the life of a fellow citizen. The Lisbon Police Department would like to thank you for the exceptional heroism and life-saving efforts you demonstrated that evening. And with that, the Police Department would like to present you with a Citizen's Life-Saving Award. You're welcome. Good job. I'm going to give you this as well. This is the letter that we wrote up for you. But we'd just like to thank you. You did an outstanding job that night, and you certainly helped save a citizen's life in this community. So thank you.
Well done.
Well done.
McDonald, the Chief of Lisbon Emergency. First pin will go to Officer Darby. A person went into cardiac arrest in Lisbon. They go into cardiac arrest in the United States every 54 seconds. Person surviving to walk out of the hospital with 80% neurological intact is called a code save. This patient happened to walk out of the hospital with 100% neurological intact. He drove the ambulance. We was able to bring the patient to the hospital so he could walk out. So and since 2004, we have given out only 5 of those.
Wow, pretty impressive.
Yeah, this one is for someone that's non-EMS related in either fire or police award. We have never given one of these out. And this goes to Jeff Picard. So there's stabbing, Jeff, in Wayne's action, that patient would not have lived. He was stabbed 42 times. We got Life Flight on board, which gave him much needed blood. He was in tough shape.
Awesome. All set. Any other good news and recognition from the council?
Mr. Chair, yes. Last year, when we first convened, I don't know if it was the first meeting or the second meeting, but Alan Ward read this very long list of accomplishments that town council did, and it was quite a piece of work. I'm not attempting to do the same thing, but I am attempting to cover some things that the council did last year. And so I thought I'd read this, and I'm going to read parts of it, by the way. Of the 12 goals that the town council laid out for itself this year, 10 were thoroughly addressed and 8 were thoroughly completed. The addressed ones included supporting green initiatives, staff recognition, and training and job description completion, town manager evaluation and contract, town office exterior lighting, solid waste cost reduction. The rest of these things, I've highlighted some areas throughout the year that concern these goals and reflect on other developments and achievements of the past town council. Note, if you're looking at this, council, these are my titles, so they may be wrong, but they're my titles. So, physical improvements, the creation of land bank process to enable opportunities to return vacant, abandoned, and tax foreclosed properties to economic use. And there may be other development opportunities with this concept for the coming year. As part of the budget process, to approve $475,000 for 22 paving projects this year, and because of savings, to add 2 more on Main Street at the end of the year. And that was a goal of the council for the last 4 years, I think, so particularly from Alan's point of view and his pushing of it. That's how it got done every year. Before that, the town was always chasing its tail to find paving projects that made sense, and they were always more expensive than we could afford until we decided to put a certain amount of money back every year for that. So that's what that is. Green physical improvements. We installed EV chargers at the Main Street parking lot to make use of a CMP energy efficiency grant. We authorized the town manager to negotiate a net energy billing credit purchase that happened after considerable interaction with legal in an attempt to protect our town interests. Under development and special events, we awarded facade program funds for 6 project locations. We constructed new parking lots for the town in support of economic development and to support the need for parking when Main Street is reconstructed. We bid out the remaining projects for completion of Graziano Park, set aside $5,000 for new banners for the town to replace aging ones provided by Positive Change Lisbon a few years ago. The LDC, the Lisbon Development Committee, continues to work on these. We voted to move forward with a market and parking study for the entire town, as many of you know, and with emphasis on Warumbo. We voted to enter an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with Ancient York Masonic Lodge for establishment of an entrepreneur and incubator hub in the building. Under other financial, we received $457,000 as the first half of ARPA fund allocation to be designated for authorized purchases. I believe that was received in May, and the rest will be coming sometime in the future. And that undesignated funds allow the town the ability to mitigate a lot of uncertainty and complexity in today's world. The auditor said that if he were to grade us, he would give a town an A plus or A minus or a B plus. And getting that from him is very difficult to do. So that's a good financial thing for us. Staffing, service awards were presented in March with 30-year awards to Town Clerk Twyla Lysette and Library Director Diane Nadeau, and 35 years to Police Detective Richard St. Amant, among many others. We hosted an employee and employee family outing in September at the Lisbon Left Hand Club, noted larger than normal employee turnover, and conducted an employee climate survey to understand what the staff thinks about employment here, and authorized a wage study for future consideration. Under awards, we received $50,000 from the Maine Community Foundation for technical assistance with recognized entrepreneurial interests. We noted that Lisbon Parks and Rec received the Maine Recreation and Parks Association Award for the 2021 Why We Love Summer video contest. We awarded the 2021 Lisbon Maine Spirit of America Foundation tribute to Miranda Torrey for her work with anti-bullying cause in Lisbon and nationally. And we issued a certificate of appreciation to Richard Nadeau for his many years and many hours of volunteer service individually and on committees for the town. We recognized Town Clerk Twyla Lysette as having been awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Maine Town and City Clerks Association. We approved a Tri-County Memorandum of Understanding between Lisbon Police and Tri-County Mental Health for outreach to prevent substance abuse. And finally, as a town council subject, we adopted a remote meeting policy as authorized by the legislature in order to allow the entire town council to meet remotely during emergency situations after the expiration of special powers granted to the governor during the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic.
A lot of achievements for sure. Any other good news and recognition from the council? I have just a couple and make them pretty brief. I just want to thank the town this weekend. The Positive Change had their May meeting, kind of updated new format at the MTM. And I know the Public Works Department actually did some decorating, and Mark's crew down there did some decorating. And the fire department was out there with the bonfire. I know Chief was out there too. And it was a good event. I mean, it was actually one of those ones that we hadn't done before. It's a little bit different, but it was still a good community event. It brought in a lot of people. So I want to just thank all the members of the town that actually put that on. It does show that there's some small town feel, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing with it. Second part, I just want to, we actually have two outgoing council people in the audience tonight. Thank you very much. It just shows your dedication tonight to being here. And I don't expect you to be every week, every meeting, but maybe every other, just so you can, give some feedback. I mean, that'd be great. Again, I want to thank all the councils that actually did serve, because there's a lot of time and dedication involved there. And I know Alan, as chair, brought us through quite a bit of unique change. And and the last part of mine is actually just thanking all the new councilors coming on. I think it's going to be a good year, and I think we have a lot to do, and hopefully we can make it look easy, right?
Knock it out. Right?
Knock it out. There you go. Thank you. Next item, Twyla.
Is public hearings. Once the chair opens the public hearing, those present who wish to speak could approach the lectern to address the council chair. Please use the microphone and state your name for the record. The first public hearing is for the special entertainment permit for the Coombs Mountford American Legion Post 158.
I'd like to open that public hearing. Anybody that has anything that would like to speak on that, could please come up to the podium. As Alan would say, I see no movement, so I think we'll move on. We'll close the public hearing. Next, please.
Next public hearing is a special entertainment permit for the Slovak Catholic Association.
And I'll open that public hearing. No movement. We'll close it. Next item, please.
Next is a public hearing for the automobile graveyard permits for Campbell's Used Auto Parts.
As always, they're in the room. Any comments for the public hearing? I'll open it now. I would say so, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
It's not tonight,
That's how
but
we
it's
know
one
it's
of
on the
these
docket.
years.
Yes.
All three of you would get renewals on there.
We appreciate him being here, and I'll close that public hearing. Next.
Is the public hearing for the automobile graveyard permit for Houston's Auto Salvage.
And I'll open that public hearing. See no activity, we'll close that. Next item, Twyla.
Next item is audience participation and response for agenda items. At this time, those in the audience who wish to speak may approach the lectern to address items or issues that are on the agenda. Please use the microphone and state your name for the record.
And we'll open it up now if anybody has any comments on anything that's on tonight's agenda. Seeing none. Next item, Twyla.
Is the consent agenda already. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine and will be considered for adoption by one motion with no separate discussion unless a counselor requests an item to be removed for immediate discussion. Any counselor wishing to remove an item may do so now. Seeing none, Order 2021, number 245, to approve the municipal accounts payable warrants for $232,758.87, the municipal payroll warrants for $170,373.57, the school accounts payable warrants for $183,490.74, the school payroll warrants for $839,491.63. The minutes of November 16, 2021, the renewal automobile graveyard permits for Campbell's Used Auto Parts and Houston's Auto Salvage, to approve the renewal special entertainment permits and liquor licenses for Coombs Mountford Post 158 and the Slovak Catholic Association, and to adopt the policy on treasurer's disbursement warrants for school employee wages and benefits, plus the adoption of the policy on treasurer's disbursement warrants for municipal employees' wages, benefits, and state fees, and to approve the state municipal agreement for the Main Street Route 125 Fraser Bridge project, authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement with MDOT on behalf of the town to protect the town's interest and to execute an MDOT construction over limit permit for the Main Street Route 125 Daringbrook project, establishing permit conditions to protect the town's interest, along with authorization to execute the MDOT construction over limit permit for the Main Street Route 125 project from Route 196 to Houston Street, establishing permit conditions to protect the town's interest.
I'll take a motion to accept.
Motion to accept.
Second.
All those in favor?
Order passed 7-0.
Next item, please.
Council orders, resolutions, and ordinances. Order 2021-246, the legal rights and town council duties, presented by Attorney Dan Stockford.
As the crowd files out.
Congratulations.
Don't take it personally, Dan. I mean, just,
I'm deeply offended.
Well,
good to see you all. Welcome to new members. Nice to see you all. I know Harry, but I don't know I've met the rest of you, but welcome aboard. And so I want to keep my comments tonight concise. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation that I think Twyla circulated. So basically, I'm going to hit on four topics, and feel free to interrupt me as I go along with questions if you have any questions. What I want to cover is just touching on the roles and responsibilities of the council as opposed to the administrative staff under the town charter. The second topic I want to cover is conflict of interest issues, both under state law and under town ordinance. Third issue is I want to touch on the Freedom of Access Act. And finally, because you draw some compensation from the town and Maine law requires that there be sexual harassment training for all employees, we're just going to touch on non-discrimination and harassment issues to sort of cover the bases on that. So first issue is the town charter, and I apologize if some of this sounds sort of fundamental, but you know, it's important to just highlight what the charter spells out as far as the respective roles of the charter and of the council and town staff under the charter. obviously, as the council, you are the legislative body of the town. So you are responsible for legislative functions, which include enacting ordinances, regulations, resolutions, and orders, establishing policy for the conduct of town government, adopting rules of conduct. When I give board trainings, whether it's councils, board of selectmen, or school boards, I always remind members that as a member of the body, you don't have any special, unique authority unto yourselves. Your authority rests with your membership as a member of the body. So, you know, I don't expect that that's the case with this group, but you know, I have had situations where my public sector clients have, you know, reported that, you know, for example, a new school board member will go into the town, or rather the school office, and ask to see files and records of employees, and you know, you just need to remind folks that you don't automatically have any greater right to those types of things than any other member of the public. Certainly, if the council as a whole made a decision for you to access, you know, particular information, or to perform a particular task, then that would be perfectly appropriate, and you would then be vested with the authority of the council in performing those tasks. But as a member of the council, you know, your authority really exists as a member of the body, rather than having any specific, unique individual authority. The council, or rather the charter makes very clear that there's a firm line of division between the legislative function that the council performs and the administrative function that the town manager and town staff perform. And section 1.05 of the charter states that members of the council shall not be involved in exercise of administrative powers of the town, except to determine that legislative enactments and policies are being carried out by the town administration. So you can compare the structure of the town to some extent to a corporation, where you are the board of directors and you rely upon your CEO and those who report up to the CEO to carry out the responsibilities and the policies that you adopt. It's appropriate that you, as the board, hold the town manager accountable for the operation of the town, but the town manager is the only employee that reports directly to you. So in administering the town, you need to rely on your CEO to supervise and oversee all the town staff. In the PowerPoint, I have a little bit of a table that sort of summarizes key roles of the council and the manager. So key roles of the town council is, as the legislative body, to adopt ordinances, resolutions, orders, and policies, selecting the town manager and supervising the town manager. You're responsible for confirming specific appointments. So the appointments that are made are subject to your confirmation for the positions of town clerk, police chief, fire chief, public works director, finance director, tax assessor, and town treasurer, tax collector. You determine and prescribe the functions of the various town departments and boards. You have the authority under the charter to investigate the affairs of the town and the conduct of specific town departments, and you also have the authority to adopt the budget. Town manager, on the other hand, is your chief administrative officer, responsible for implementing and enforcing the policies and ordinances that you adopt. The town manager is responsible for appointing, supervising, and suspending or removing all town employees, subject to your confirmation for the specific positions that we just discussed. The town manager has authority to authorize any administrative officer to exercise these powers with respect to subordinates in that officer's department. So your department, the town manager can delegate the responsibility for overseeing individual town employees to individual department heads. And the town manager also is responsible for preparing the budget for the town, subject to your approval of that budget. The charter in section 2.10 states that except for your confirming appointment of certain officers, neither the council nor any of its members shall in any manner dictate the appointment or removal of any town administrative officers or employees within the jurisdiction of the town manager or his or her subordinates. And it also states that the council may express its views and fully and freely discuss with the manager anything pertaining to appointment and removal of officers and employees under the town manager's jurisdiction. So you supervise the town manager. You have the right to hold the town manager accountable for her oversight of town staff that report to her. But it's not your role to directly supervise those who are under the town manager. Section 2.10 of the charter reinforces that by stating that except for your authority to conduct investigations into a town department, the council and its members shall deal with the town officers and employees who are subject to the direction and supervision of the town manager solely through the town manager, and that neither the council nor its members shall give orders to any such officer or employee, either publicly or privately. So just important to remember that you shouldn't be going out and telling the public works director or whoever what to do directly. Address it with the town manager and rely on the town manager to carry out that function. Just a little bit further on that, you should rely on the town manager to manage town departments and employees to the extent that you have questions or concerns about the operation of departments or employees within the town. You should address those to the town manager. And employees who have concerns about issues within the town should follow the chain of command. So if somebody comes to you directly with a concern or a complaint, it's appropriate to ask, well, have you gone to your supervisor? Have you gone to the town manager? Have you followed the chain of command in connection with the concern that you're raising? Just a little bit on the role of the council chair. And I know, Fern, you have experience with this role. So
Good, some bad, yes, but yeah.
yeah, that's right. Under the charter, the chair is the head of town government for all ceremonial purposes and for purposes of military law. I don't know what authority that gives you.
Don't want to find out either.
You need to look to the governor for that, apparently, under the charter. The chair is responsible for presiding at all meetings of the council, developing the agenda in consultation with the town manager, representing the council in dealings with the town manager, and in dealings with boards, commissions, and committees, and the chair has the authority to delegate that authority. And the role of the vice chair is to exercise all powers of the chair in the event there's a temporary absence or disability of the chair. I just note that the charter provides the town clerk acts as the secretary of the council and maintains public records of all proceedings, and she does a great job of that.
Thanks.
So that's a high-level overview of the respective roles as laid out in the charter for the council and the administrative staff. So any questions on that before I move on to conflict of interest issues? Or just wanted to cover the basics on that. So when we look at conflict of interest issues, there's really two sources of conflict of interest rules. One is under, well, there's three sources, actually. There's main statute, there's some case law, common law around conflicts of interest, and then the town has a ethics policy that also governs. So I'll touch upon the statutory rules around financial conflicts of interest first, which are probably obviously it's sort of the most strict rule that applies. I think your ethics ordinance is more strict than state law generally. But what state law provides is that if any member of the council has a direct or indirect pecuniary interest, classic legal jargon, then they cannot vote or participate in a vote involving the entity in which they have a pecuniary interest. The definition of a pecuniary interest is pretty narrow. It's limited to individuals who are both owners or employees of a business or other entity and also own at least 10% of the ownership interest in that business or other economic entity. So it's relatively narrow circumstances in which this provision comes into play. But under the statutory rule, a vote by the council on any question can be voided unless a municipal officer with a direct or indirect pecuniary interest makes full disclosure of their interest and abstains from not only voting or negotiating a contract, but attempting to influence the decision. So it's very important in those circumstances that if there is a situation in which an entity in which you have an ownership interest is coming before the council for a decision, it's important that you not only refrain from voting and disclose your relationship, but also that you avoid any involvement in the decision, which includes, otherwise attempting to influence the decision includes, basically lobbying members of the council in favor of your interest. So that is the statutory conflict of interest rule around financial interests. Your ordinance is quite a bit more strict with respect to conflicts of interest. And the ordinance states that a public official shall refrain from participation in a matter when there exists an actual, potential, or reasonably perceived conflict of interest. And the ordinance defines a conflict of interest as a situation where a public official cannot participate in a matter because they have a personal relationship, financial involvement, or there's another situation that would cause a reasonable person to believe that the public official cannot act in his or her official capacity without self-interest or bias. There are definitions in the ordinance as to what is participation in a matter, what is financial involvement, what is a personal relationship that might give rise to a conflict of interest. I won't go into detail on what those definitions are other than to say that they're broadly worded. So because of the existence of this ordinance, my advice to counselors is to be very sensitive to issues of potential conflicts of interest when there's an issue that comes before the council. And if you have any questions, talk it over with the manager, talk it over with the chair. We get questions frequently about that type of issues from clients. And so, sometimes it's not entirely clear, and, it's helpful to get advice and some feedback on whether there is a conflict of interest. But under the ordinance, it requires that when there is that type of conflict of interest, that there's a requirement that the member of the council or member of another town board recuse themselves from involvement in those decisions. In the statute, there is a broad provision that all elected officials shall avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest through disclosure or abstention. So even when you don't have a conflict of interest that necessarily requires that you abstain, if it could be potentially perceived to be a conflict of interest, the rule under the statute is that you should either disclose your interest or involvement or relationship to the question before you vote, or abstain from voting. So that's an example of it's sort of a catch-all provision where if you think it's a close call, chances are that catch-all provision comes into play at the very least. And again, it's something that you should give some thought to and do what's right as far as either disclosing what your interest is.
May not even prove to be a concern, but it's worthwhile venting ahead of time to make sure it's not going to be an issue.
Yeah, exactly. So that sort of covers the landscape around financial or personal relationship interest. The other conflict of interest category that you should be aware of is there are some constraints under state law and town ordinance around service by council members in other positions within the town. And your ordinance or charter rather is somewhat stricter than Maine law on that. Under the charter 2.10, no council member may hold any other town office or employment by the town. So you're precluded from holding other positions within the town. And for a period of 1 year after leaving the council, you are precluded from holding any compensated town office or town employment for a period of a year. So just something to be sensitive to. So that's a high level. As I said, I'm moving quickly, so
That's fine.
That's a high-level overview of conflict of interest issues. Anybody have any questions on that? So I just wanted to touch on Freedom of Access Act issues. Maine law, as you probably know, requires that all elected officials have freedom of access training. And I think the way that the town does it is you need to sign a form that you've reviewed the online materials and the FAQ that's online from the Freedom of Access Act website that the town maintains. So you should make sure you do that and fill out that form so it's on file in the town office. I just wanted to touch on a few different Freedom of Access Act issues. One is, the conservative approach is to view that anytime that three or more counselors get together and talk about town business, it potentially falls within the definition of a public proceeding that notice and an opportunity for the public to participate is required. So general advice is, whether you're in the town office or out at a local business, best not to have 3 or more people discussing town office. The notion behind the Freedom of Access Act is that public business should be conducted in the public view, and so best to avoid even the perception that that's not happening. So that's a good rule of thumb. As far as, there's really 2 components of the Freedom of Access Act issue, making sure that notice is given for all meetings, public meetings, what should be a public meeting, and then that public records are accessible. Another thing that I always advise boards on is use of emails, whether your email is on your personal device, on your personal email account, or not, or on a town email address or town device. It has the potential for falling within the definition of a public record, and it is common these days that requests for public records are submitted. It's sort of, some people sort of approach it as a hobby to request emails and other communications. So you should be thoughtful about, the fact that what you put in writing in an email, if it relates to the transaction of town business, it is potentially a public record, and you may have to produce it if there's a request for it, regardless of where it sits. Another thing to be sensitive to in connection with emails is not to use email to transact the business of the council. So generally, we recognize that, we recommend rather that email not be used for substantive back and forth on town issues among council members. If there's information that needs to be distributed to the council, then that's appropriate. But generally, you shouldn't be having a back and forth by email on issues that properly should come before the council in a meeting.
Dan, can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
A public notice is required for public proceedings if 3 or more people, even though our quorum is 4 to have a meeting.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. So there's a debate among municipal attorneys about whether it's only when a quorum meets or can it be any time that 3 or more members are meeting. And the conservative approach that the Maine Municipal Association follows is the 3 or more, avoid getting together, having 3 or more board members get together to discuss business. So that's the conservative approach. I think there's a reasonable argument that it's only when an actual quorum is meeting that it's a violation of the Freedom of Access Act, but there isn't any definitive case law in Maine on that. And probably Lisbon doesn't want to be the test case on that. No. So best to follow the 3 or more rule.
Okay. And that's Maine statute, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you can't trump that with an ordinance. I mean, if you can't trump
Correct.
With state law.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, exactly. Just a couple of notes on executive sessions. Executive sessions need a 3/5 vote to go into executive session. There are very limited reasons that a board can meet in executive session. The most likely circumstances in which you're likely to meet in executive session would be for personnel matters, labor negotiations, if you have an economic development deal where there's sensitive information that might prejudice the town's bargaining position in making an offer for a piece of land or accepting an offer for a piece of land, for example. Review of confidential records, all of those are permissible reasons to meet in executive session, but it does require a super majority vote. Information discussed in executive session must be kept confidential, so important to always remember that. Don't repeat things that are discussed in an executive session. And then no official action can be taken in an executive session. So there should never be a vote in executive session on an issue. If there needs to be a vote, you need to come out of executive session and take the vote in public session. Great, so I'll move on to discrimination. One thing I just wanted to, before I move on, social media, is
mean.
Yeah, exactly, is a hot topic for municipal lawyers and employment lawyers. My general recommendation is to, for all the things that I've talked about as far as use of email should apply equally to social media. So you shouldn't be using social media to sort of, among private messaging on social media to make decisions as a council would be inappropriate. And another thing to be sensitive to is to avoid being publicly critical of town employees, identifiable town employees. It happens that I've been involved in litigation where public employees have sued our clients for defamation around things that were said in public meetings by elected officials. So it's bad for morale, but it also can lead to potential litigation. So if you have something negative to say about a town employee, best to share that with the town manager and rely on her to address that issue than to air those concerns in a public forum.
I think you'll find that, and I think we're all jumped down the hole, is you are on any type of social network and there's a complaint that comes out. As a counselor, you feel like it's really your obligation to try to respond and answer to it, but you're going to find that will actually get your head chopped off as quick as you think about it. You're better off, let it go, or if there's ever a question, the same idea, have you ever stopped in and spoken to the town manager? Just as soon as you start, defending the town on any type of forum, it's bad, huh, Don?
Yes.
We've all been there. As much as you're trying, because, one of the things that is really tough for a counselor is when you spend a lot of time on a project, or you spend a lot of time on a budget issue, or spend a lot of time on anything. We could have met a dozen times, and then something totally to the contrary gets put out there that this is what the town's doing. You just feel like, what the hell? This isn't what we're doing. This is not what happened. But it's better sometimes not to correct it, or try not to correct it.
Well,
and
better
actually,
yet, it happened in executive session, and you can't say a thing.
yeah. So you're just trying, but it is really tough. Sometimes to actually have the knowledge of what really, in a sense, is taking place, and hearing other people talk otherwise. But it's a challenge, and sometimes it's not worth. The only thing you really can do is ask the person to get more educated on it by asking the right people. And people will take that as a slam too. So you're better off just staying away.
Just don't get roped in.
Don't get roped in. Yeah. You will get roped into aisle 4 at Food City really quick.
Right.
Don't worry about it.
I'll stay out of aisle 4.
So last topic I just wanted to address is discrimination and harassment. The town has, you as the council have policies on discrimination and harassment that prohibit discrimination or harassment based on a protected status. And I think most people know what the list of protected classes under state and federal law includes things like race, color, gender, sexual orientation, physical or mental disability, religion, age, ancestry, national origin. Also includes whistleblowing activity, reporting illegal activity, and asserting claims under the Workers' Compensation Act. And federal law and town policy also prohibit discrimination on the basis of marital status and status as a covered veteran. So, you should be aware of those prohibitions while you're not carrying out the administrative functions of the town. Certainly if somebody were to come and complain to you about an issue that, touched on one of those protected classes, you'd want to send them in the right direction as far as reporting it to their department head or the town manager. And in addition, it's important to note that it's illegal to retaliate against somebody who raises concerns about illegal harassment or discrimination. So if somebody has a concern like that, again, that would be something that they should bring to the attention of administration so it can be handled appropriately. Harassment is an extension of the discrimination prohibition, and it's generally illegal for an employer to harass or permit the harassment of employees based on any of those protected classes that I just referred to. And most of the time we think of unlawful harassment as sexual harassment because that's what we hear the most about, but harassment based on any of those protected categories would be illegal and inappropriate. So generally, harassment is unwelcome conduct on the basis of a protected status or conduct that affects an individual's employment, interferes with their work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment based on a protected status. So just as sexual harassment's illegal, it's illegal to harass somebody based on their age or be it too young or too old. Under Maine law, either is unlawful harassment. So, and then I just wanted to talk a little bit about sexual harassment in particular. I think we hear a lot about it in the news, these types of issues. Maine law defines sexual harassment as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature that affects an individual's employment, interferes with their work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Just a couple things to remember. The victim or the harasser can be a man or a woman. Doesn't have to be a person of the opposite sex. If it's harassment that's tied to gender or sex, then it can be illegal. The harasser doesn't have to be a supervisor. It can be a coworker. But if it's a coworker and it's happening in the workplace or affecting somebody's work performance, the employer has an obligation to respond to it. The victim doesn't have to be the person harassed, but could be anyone affected by the offensive conduct. So coworkers harassing another coworker, and there's a bystander, another employee that hears it. Even if the individual that's not subject to the harassment is offended, if the person that's hearing it is offended, then it potentially could be unlawful and inappropriate. And it's only illegal generally if the harasser's conduct is unwelcome. But from the employer's standpoint, we don't want to sort of count on something not being unwelcome to and tolerate inappropriate language and conduct in the workplace. So sexual harassment is something obviously you should be sensitive to. Obviously, as council members, you shouldn't engage in that type of conduct. But more, just as importantly, if you find out about specific circumstances that could fall within the definition of sexual harassment, it's important that you, again, point people in the right direction to bring a complaint, and so that it can be investigated and addressed. Things that can be sexual harassment can range from sexual assault to sexual advances, degrading comments, displays of sexually suggestive objects or images, unwanted touching, stalking, quid pro quo harassment, conditioning a benefit on acceding to some type of sexual advance, compliments, jokes, flirting, nicknames, gifts. If it's unwelcome, it can be considered sexual harassment, and if it's unwelcome, then it needs to be addressed. So I've got a couple slides toward the end that responsibilities of all employees are to be respectful, use a filter in your own behavior, say stop if somebody is saying something that makes you uncomfortable, if you're comfortable saying it, but if not, then employees should report it so that the employer can address it. And as the employer, the representative of the employer, you as council members should take any issues regarding harassment that come to your attention seriously. Make sure they're reported to administration, so they can be investigated, and the town ultimately has a responsibility to, to the extent harassment exists, to take prompt, effective action to address it and prevent it from continuing. So, and employees have the right to report harassment, both internally to administration of the town, as well as to the Maine Human Rights Commission, which is the state agency responsible for investigating complaints of harassment and discrimination. So employees have the right to go to the Maine Human Rights Commission, regardless of whether they take advantage of the town's own reporting and complaint procedure. So that's my quick overview of some much more complicated topics, but hopefully that was useful. And I think the purpose of this, is primarily just to make folks sensitive to these issues, and if you have questions or concerns about specific issues as they arise, again, I'd recommend you talk to the chair or the manager and as to how best to address them.
So always the answer the question instead of think you know the answer, right?
Exactly.
A couple questions too, and I'll let the rest of the council actually ask also. But I believe, Diane, isn't the training that we do, is there a certain time frame for the harassment?
Yes, so now that we have new counselors, once I get the new HR director on board, we'll send out the invite so that the council gets the training. You also, the current council prior to tonight should have already gotten that. Do you remember seeing it?
Yes, yeah.
Probably a month or so ago.
As far as for that particular training,
You didn't get one?
No.
Okay.
It was just
I'll make sure
this
you
summer
get it.
that we actually had gone through some stuff. I thought that some other training that was sent out. So pretty much.
The know before stuff. Are
Yeah.
you all getting that?
Yeah,
What's
I
that
got
now?
The know before training, the cybersecurity training?
Yeah, the hardest thing is that maybe that we just need to set a policy where, I'm not sure how we do it, but unfortunately our web, if you haven't noticed on your web page, you get a lot of junk, right? And you don't really know what's good, what's bad, and what actually is active for us or not. So I mean, I think if there's an actual training or something that really needs to be looked at, maybe we just need to send out a memo, whether it's me or you, Diane, to say this is correct. I mean, I've been caught fishing by a phishing thing on our town website where, someone sent the thing saying, hey, this is Alan, please contact me, I got a concern. You mean you respond back to it, and so just because it's a town website or the town's email doesn't mean that it's actually always legit stuff. So I think maybe on some of that training, because some of it I wasn't sure if it was actually active or if it's something that we were supposed to do.
The know before is, and you should have just gotten something this past week.
We did.
So that is training you really need to do, because I tell you, the cyber criminals out there, it's amazing what they can do. And they're getting better and better all the time, and we are getting phishing.
Yep. Is that something we
really
can?
Are.
Is that, how long of a training is that? Is that like
It's one of them is, I just did one today. Half hour is for one session.
The others are short.
The others are really short, but the half hour one is a really good one because it shows you exactly what they're doing.
Maybe we could actually just send out another email to the all councilors, and just actually mention the ones that they need to look at, and maybe is there a way that you can reinitiate that, forward it again?
I can't. It's got to come from them.
It has to
Because
come from them.
when they send it to you, it's tied to your email. So when you click on it, it brings up your email, and then you put your password
It
in.
sends you a reminder.
I could send
every
you
once in a while,
mine, but it's going to bring up my email address, and you're not going to be able
Totally
to
honest
get
with
it.
you, I don't trust a lot on a lot of emails sometimes. So unless I know it's specific that something we need to do, I don't open it. Especially since that time with Alan, I was caught off guard when you think the chair is sending you something really important, and you click on it, and you find out it's just a.
That's mentioned in that training.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, right. That's good practice.
But that's why I don't open anything unless I know that it's actual. I don't.
Know before is
It
legit.
is. I mean, if you
Yeah.
get that know before, just email me and ask me, is this legit? And I'll tell you it is.
I had never heard of it before. I mean, the know before. It's
Since we
something that.
changed this.
Since we
people
went to
got
Burgess, That's how we get our cybersecurity training.
The other thing is, could you explain, just touch a little bit on the idea of how we actually fit in as employees of the town? Because you mentioned the idea of employer, employees, but there are certain things and requirements where it comes to the idea of the training. So as councilors, now you're somewhat an employee of the town,
Right.
meaning that you have to
You
meet
get a
all the same-
W-2
Yeah.
and some compensation. I know it's princely.
Getting wealthy.
Generous compensation.
So with that being said, we have to meet the same requirements. So
Yeah, in a number of areas, yeah.
Yeah.
We need to do training because it's required of all employees.
So as much as the department head could actually be liable to the town as far as for financials if they were to be sued, so isn't the council because we're actually employees. So the idea of the training, that's why it's been a concern in the past, has actually raised some eyebrows of how much of an employee we are. But when it actually comes to the idea of training, and if Diane sent something out saying we need to have this done, especially if it's coming through HR, it's required because of your employment. So and I know that was actually one of those things where it was, trying to figure out how much of an employee are we?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
what level
Yeah.
do we actually fit within? But
Yeah, and no question there's some ambiguity in the law in a number of areas as far as.
Yes, we have had some issues in the past with
we
that.
have, yeah, but it's just easy to get out front, just let everybody know, hey, look, you're an employee enough that if something's mandated as far as for our insurance, for liability-wise, you just need to actually make sure you fulfill it that way there's no questions. You know what I mean? And if there is a big question, it just needs to be brought up well ahead of time versus the idea of, just
Can
letting
I,
it pass
can
by.
I make a comment too about
Absolutely.
it's? I think I try to follow all these rules and do all these things right, but I got caught this year in something I didn't even think I was violating any rules. But you, as a customer of the town, sometimes when you have tax bills and you get all kinds of things, if you ask a question of a department as a customer, you don't think too much about it. But then you say, well, could you do this and could you do that for this employee, thinking nothing more than you're a customer. But that's not the way the employee takes it, and that happened to me. I asked a question directly and asked if he could do something and didn't realize I was overstepping bounds. So the role is different now. You have to be very careful of that.
Yeah, I mean, it is really important, and I think it's hard to do sometimes because we live in a very small community. But if there's ever, our only employee that we deal with is Diane. So, if there's ever a question, it actually goes to Diane. So if a department head, someone actually, like you said, something about Public Works, it's, we're never to actually, I shouldn't say, it always should go Diane first. So Diane may actually say, hey, look, you can, it's okay to ask that question, right? Or to that department head. But yeah, it should always go through Diane. So that way we're never overstepping or actually, there are times where we'll have the conversation, and it may be even a workshop or something type of setting, but it's always easier to pass it up to the management office to make sure it gets vented down through, so.
Yeah, it is good to, it's kind of funny because you're a counselor, employees are likely to perceive what you say to carry a certain weight, and so good practice to just be sensitive to that.
Any other questions? I'm sure we're going to have some more, and what the best thing about is the opportunity is he's here, so if there is a question that comes up, it's better to get it answered, and we can put it through Diane. If it comes through me, we'll put it through Diane, and she can ask, and a lot of times a written response is nice, just so you're actually, sometimes written responses could be lengthy at times because of the legality of it, but it's always just better to ask than it is to think you know the answer. So, and even through that training, it's actually even the idea of just visuals, right? Rolling your eyes, anything that could be perceived as you not actually, giving someone your full respect can actually be shown as actually disrespectful. So, the training's pretty interesting. If nothing else, it's a short video, and I think there was wasn't there some more that was coming on this year, Diane? Or I thought they had mentioned there was some more different type of training.
Yeah, all the department heads went through some extensive training the last few months through the MIMIC website. We did a lot with diversity. There's a lot on there that we went through, and communication and so forth, and being respectful to your employees. But all we're going to send you is the stuff that's required by law, which is the harassment, and there's some diversity in that as well.
And Twyla, the one with the idea of knowing the other rules as far as for like I know there's a certain amount of time that you have as far as to meet the requirements of the other training, right? When it came to
There's a limit on that freedom of access training. You have to do it within 120 days of being elected. So 30 days have gone by. I've received one. So the rest of you need to fill those right out.
yeah. And it's actually pretty easy. You just go through and actually read it through, and there's no test at the end. Basically,
Right.
just you actually fill out a paper or sign it saying that you actually reviewed it, and Twyla documents it, and it's
Yep. You just have to read the material and then sign that you read it.
and you actually can find that link through our webpage, right?
Yes. And or I'll just pass this right out. Everybody take one that needs it. And the link is on that paper, and that's the paper you sign and return to me.
How often does that need to be updated, Twyla? Is there a student that-
Every time you're elected.
The other training too, I just got an email from the EMA office. We have to update a policy that was enacted, I think, in 2006. And it tells the roles and responsibilities from the top, which is the council, and myself downward, on what you have to have for NIMS training in order to qualify for grants. And we qualify for a lot of grants, and if we don't do the training, we can't get the money. So, and all the new counselors are going to have to go through the training.
Is that because I had done mine in Auburn?
Yep.
They actually did it. Is that something we can have done here and have the whole
I can
council go
check
through it?
and see.
I mean, that'd be
It's a
great if we
different
could have a
EMA
workshop.
director now.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a different one now. I don't know if she'll come here and do it, but she
I don't
did.
think I ever did.
One year she did.
You didn't go up as far as, and basically what it is if we were actually,
FEMA and that kind of stuff.
if we're actually looking for FEMA grants and stuff, the council actually has to go through the training
Board with it.
to actually be able to get, to accept the type of, you just gotta understand what the grants are for and what they can be used for. And if we could actually have them come here, I mean, then we could actually do a workshop prior to a meeting. It may be an easier way for us all to, it's nice to actually go through it. And I know I did it by myself that night. I wish I had other counselors there that could tap and say, hey, look, this is some really cool stuff, and they talk about doing some stuff. And the one that I went through, they were really talking about desktop strategy planning. So if something was to drastic happen in your town, how would you do it? And, I said, this would be great, the idea if we actually had something to do with, like the Moxie Parade, a car ran through the crowd, and which just happened recently, right?
Yep.
And took down 40, 50 people. How would we actually handle that as a community? Would we get ambulances? God, we can't even get one now. Forget about, it's challenging sometimes. But again, how would you network to make that happen? And who would actually be in charge? And it's interesting because at that meeting, they were, those fire chiefs there and police chiefs, and it was really it was interesting to see who actually thought that they would actually be, in charge of something like that. You know what I mean? So, and it's not always just black and white, but you got to have, if you can actually as a community put together a good plan of why you need the money. They say that the money's, you're more apt to get it, but the idea of going through the training could help. So,
They
maybe.
typically do that training after January is when they send the notice, but I'll reach out to her, especially where we have 4 new counselors. And then she'd probably open it up to the area too, to see if there's any other elected officials that would want to come and do the training as well.
I mean, any training we can do as a group, I think we're better off. That way there we all understand it, and we actually can like, team build off it, but at least actually, feel that we got the best knowledge out of it as possible. Anybody have any other questions for Dan? I mean, there's a lot to take in. I mean, and typically we don't come up with a controversy until it arises, right? So,
That's right.
and something may seem really simple like the employment thing, but I know that sometimes actually, throws us for a loop sometimes because it's not really defined. But
The Zoom meeting that we had touched some of this, the MMA Zoom meeting
Oh, yeah,
that we had the other night.
Yeah.
It touched quite a bit, actually, what you touched on. And so us 4 knew we got to zoom in on that and ask questions. And it was pretty good. It was. Then they sent you a certificate afterwards. So.
nice. Does that count for any of the training? I mean, I don't know the content that was in it, but
It was quite a bit, isn't it?
and did they actually go over like any of the?
Do they do the freedom of access?
Yeah.
So that you could
Absolutely.
get your,
They may actually,
Maybe you should keep certificates like that or
Yeah,
copies
they
of the
did.
files.
They did. Yep,
So
they
maybe
did all
that-
they did all of that, and then
Nice.
and
They
then
have a
after,
certificate, I would think.
after
that
you're
would
done, you
almost-
get this.
Nice. I like.
I mean, is there a way that you can print out the content of what that was, so actually we can put it with it
Yeah,
to show that Freedom of
They
Information
said
Act
that
was?
if you wanted to, you could request that.
The content?
It's,
Yeah.
Yes.
it was like death by PowerPoint.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
death by PowerPoint
You
for
could-
sure, but
Yeah.
you
You
can
could
though,
get
if
all
you
the
want to.
slides and all that stuff.
You can get a hold of them, they will definitely send it to you.
There's a separate Freedom of Access training that they provide. It's a shorter workshop.
Yeah.
And there's a certificate of that.
Okay,
That's
so
probably
it's-
the required kind of training,
Yeah.
as opposed to this, that's a piece of the training.
Yeah. And all the stuff that you read, you go online and you read through the information, that's pretty naughty too sometimes, because I mean, unless you have a specific thing you're looking for, it's actually a lot of information.
There is a lot.
Either way, it's good. I appreciate you guys doing the training. That way there, at least that's that much ahead of it.
Yeah, everything Diane sent me, and I went right after it right away as quick as it was
A lot of
good.
material, isn't
There was
it?
a lot of material, there was, and that, and then the package that you sent that had it all in there, the website, so I went on all them websites, took that training, that's what I gave you tonight, all that
Yep.
sign off and all that. The guy, I think 5 trainings I took that I gave you tonight through that whole package that you sent us, and I got that all done. And it did say you have 120 days, but I prefer to do what I can today and not, why put it off to tomorrow kind of
Right.
thing, so.
It gets harder and harder.
It gets harder and harder, because before you know it, you're overwhelmed, right? So, thank you for, sending that and keeping us up to breast on that, because, that Zoom, you got us right on that right away, so it's good, especially for, newcomers.
There's something you touched on tonight, and maybe you can elaborate on it or not, but I know in the past, especially when it comes to anybody that's employed by the town, I think there's really no situation where as a council meeting that we would actually ever be pointing or talking to any employee of the town by name or position, I don't think. I mean, Dan, is that pretty fair to say? I understand if we're talking about, a project going on or something, but actually pointing out or bringing a concern about or actually talking about it in a bad way. I mean, anybody that's actually employed by the town. I mean, when it comes to names and information and stuff like that, that's really just best to keep off the slate for the council, correct?
Yeah, that. I strongly recommend avoiding the, sort of negative discussions about employees in a public setting. But that doesn't mean that when there are concerns about employees that they
Can't
are
be
just
addressed.
ignored. I think the important thing is to channel it in the right direction. So if it's if it was a concern about the town manager, the concern should go to the chair, and the chair should deal with it. If it's a concern about staff under the town manager, then it should go to the town manager for the town manager to address.
I would think too, reflecting on that, we have to be very careful when we're talking about individuals who are not town employees in a public setting.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Any names, yeah.
Dropping names in a less than flattering situation is probably not a good
Been there many
idea.
times before. Some people actually take, as a council, you actually get the phone call saying, hey, my name was actually mentioned in the other meeting the other night. It's not fair if I wasn't there to actually defend myself. So, I mean, if you are bringing stuff up, it's especially if you're mentioning
Make sure they know.
a business or individuals, it's actually really good just to try to refrain from that, because you will get called out on it. I mean, maybe not in a good way, but you will get called out on it.
I guess rightfully so.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, you can't take offense to it, right? If you're allowing that to happen, you're opening the door. So
That's right.
You
Yeah,
got-
for
you
good
got-
reason.
It's nothing personal, right? You just got to deal with it.
Good deal. Anything else for Dan?
Diane, we did the Zoom training through Maine Municipal. Do we all become registered with Maine Municipal? Are we eligible to become
Yep.
members of Maine Municipal?
Yeah, all of the new ones are now. I made sure that you are.
Okay. So we have access to whatever they have
Yep.
available for us.
You have to create your own password and stuff.
Yeah.
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 It's in their box.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you become a counselor, you get what's called the Maine Townsman,
Mhm.
and that's a magazine
Yep.
that they put out as well. And you can get it electronically, or you can get it in paper. You just need to let us know.
So when you go on their website, just register.
Okay, good.
Or if there's something you want to attend, just let me know and I can set you up again, whichever way you want to do it.
Okay.
The older gentleman there, the lawyer, he mentioned that.
Great. Good
All
to see you all.
You think? It's going once. Don?
No, thank you.
You're good? Okay, I didn't know if you had another question.
No, no.
Great.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure we'll have you
Yeah,
back again.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you for your
See you all.
time.
Appreciate you waiting.
Yeah, thanks.
Take care, Dan.
Take care.
All right, next item, please.
Order 2021-247, the council working rules.
All right, on this issue, has everybody read through the working rules of the council?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I suggest that we take a time to look at them, if you want to look at them.
That was going to be my recommendation. Yes, thank you.
And,
Yep.
because they have been revised in the last couple of years, so there's probably not a whole lot to do, but take at
Take a
least
good
a
look.
meeting.
Yep.
They're in, you know where they are? Everybody know where they are?
They're in the ordinances?
They're in the town
Oh, the
ordinances,
charter.
yes.
Charter ordinance.
They're in Part 2, Town Council Rules, Chapter 74. And,
They're in the packet tonight too, aren't they?
It's Article 74201.
Yeah, and it's linked right for me.
In our
Yeah.
packet tonight, and
Yeah, it's right
typically
there.
on the back of the agenda is a
That's great when you're here.
What's that?
No,
Yeah,
that's the,
shorter version, right?
Oh, yeah, that's.
I mean, the
yeah.
paper. The paper.
Yeah,
right.
that's shorter
It's
version.
a shorter version of what the public sees when they come in, so
Oh, what's on the back of the agenda?
Correct, yeah.
Shorter version.
the shorter version, yep.
The packet that was given tonight, was that in the mailboxes, or?
I didn't get one.
So that's one of the things
Do
that,
not sign up for your information. It comes through your email. So you go to the town website, and it says sign e-alerts,
Yeah, and you sign, I checked all that stuff off.
and you put on council, and it should just get emailed to you automatically.
Okay.
So look through your email.
Oh, so maybe it's, okay.
It's
so
probably there.
going,
It's electronically.
So going along with Don's idea, I mean, definitely it's worthwhile to look at them, and these have been modified over the years. You'll see some things were actually changed years ago just to try to make the meeting go smoother. They seem like they're kind of in odd order, but the idea of, having it right out front, the audience participation for response for agenda items, it is key. So we don't allow, we used to years ago allow people to actually make comments on every one of the items on the agenda, and which actually could get very time consuming.
Yes.
So we actually took that part out of the rules and made it so if you actually have something to say it before the meeting if you actually have a concern. That way there we all get a chance to listen to it. It's really not for us to respond at that point in time. It's more so the idea of just take it in. And some of it puts a whole new light on when we brought it up, and sometimes you just can understand the concerns moving forward. But again, everything as Don had mentioned has been modified over the years just to try to make it so it works the best we can. And we'll talk about the rules. I mean, one of the things that we have a great council. I think we have a good makeup. And if you're not getting your packets, make sure you are. Years ago, it used to be the idea the packets used to be printed out. They would be in the box the Thursday before, and you come in, you pick up your packets, you go through them. Now it's done electronically, and I find myself a lot of times easier just to go online, and anybody can actually open up the packet. And pretty much all the corresponding information should be within that packet, either online or what you can bring up. So if there's something that comes up that you see that's on the agenda that you don't feel that you actually have enough information for, so when you get to the meeting you can actually speak about it or actually approve it. I would like to think that, over the weekend, if you get that information, come that next Monday, if you actually have a burning question and need more information, that you reach out to me, reach out to the vice chair, or reach out to Diane and say, hey, look, I need more information on this. I got to be honest with you, I don't believe it's acceptable for a councilor to come to a meeting and not have the information necessary, then actually just open up a can of worms and spend 45 minutes on a discussion that actually a call to Diane could have solved really quick. If you're not looking at your packets before you get to the meeting, it's almost wasting your time to be here, because you really need to have the information out front. That information, it's in the past, and it wasn't on the council that I was, I actually made a recommendation that you'll see that everything comes through. There would be a recommendation of the town manager. So she's gone through, and what her recommendation is, if for some reason that when you read through it, that's not what your recommendation is going to be, or you feel that something needs to be different, please reach out to somebody and get the explanation. We sometimes have meetings that run to after 10:30 at night, and the only reason those meetings run really long is because there's something that comes up during the meeting that really could have been handled ahead of time, that we hash out here for 45 minutes to an hour, that really could have been resolved by the idea of someone actually getting that information ahead of time. You're still going to have discussions, don't get me wrong. Me and Don have sat here long enough beating each other back and forth if people finally say stop, we're moving on, you know what I mean? Chris Spinell used to be a good one to say, okay, it's done, move on, But either way, I mean, the packets, so there's no more printed packets, right?
Correct.
So there was actually a point in time where people were showing to meetings so unprepared that actually the chair at the time actually made the police department hand deliver the packets that Thursday. They used to actually police officer knock on your door.
No kidding.
Here's your packet. You officially have it.
Why didn't you? Oh.
So there was no excuse that you didn't have the information. But today I think the council makeup here is pretty good, and I think it's just one of those things where to me, my idea of a council meeting is where we come in and we're all well prepared and we can actually present the information out and actually support our personnel, support the town manager, and not actually have a back and forth trying to figure out where we stand. So again, that's one of the meeting rules that I think is really important, the idea of just making sure you do have it. And a while back, I know I was actually not getting it downloaded, and I would just go through. And so if you're not getting it, if you don't feel you got it, you always can just go on, because I think it's posted onto the web page the same night, right?
Yes.
So, and
Friday before, it should be there.
and there's like 2 or 3 different ways you can bring that up to in a web page too,
Yes.
right? If you go play with it, you can bring down all the meeting information. But if for some reason you don't feel that you have all the information to make a good decision when it comes to meeting, please do it well ahead of time. Just ask the questions, and if we don't have the answers, I'm sure Diane can get them for you and make sure that she follows up with any information that you need, and I think that's really important.
So Twyla, you said that they're basically ready the Friday prior.
Yes, and in your council rules, it says it's by 4, I think, or something.
Before.
Yeah, we try to get it out by Thursday, but sometimes that doesn't happen.
So it gives you the weekend to review it. If you do have a question, we can call, you or Fern or whatever the question details to. Because I agree, you don't want to air out the laundry here. It's not where we need to be doing it, right? We need to try to stay connected and on the page.
More organized we look, the better the staff looks.
Exactly.
If you go to the main page on the Lisbon website, just go over to the left and subscribe. Then it'll automatically come into your email.
That's to sign up for alerts. That's how you subscribe.
That's how you subscribe.
Let us know if you need some help with that.
Right.
Then you click on read more, and then you've got it.
So Don, what's been the deadline for council? So any councilor can actually have something brought to the agenda, okay? So if you actually have something that...
Just as long as it gets there before the agenda's put.
Thursday.
Exactly. Well, that's what I said. What were you and Ellen?
Thursday.
We're using typically as Wednesday, I think. is
Wednesday
what
for
you
department heads, but I would say
We're
theirs
using
is
Wednesday
what,
or at the
Wednesday?
very latest Thursday if you got a good idea what it needs to be.
So definitely early in the week prior to that's
Yes.
coming out.
Yeah.
So
I
early in the
don't
week.
really
You don't
like to
need
go
the
past
chair and the vice
Wednesday
chair's
because we're
permission to
still
do it.
putting it together, and if we get something at the last minute, it's just gonna.
Why don't we just try, the Tuesday before to actually make sure that if you actually have something that's coming on an agenda, that you can actually work with myself or Harry or check with Diane to make sure that, again, we want to make sure that anything that's coming up is actually presented properly. And then again, if it's same thing we talk about documentation, you may have the greatest idea in the world, but if Diane can't support the documentation on the agenda, she probably won't put it on, right? That's been pretty much a rule for a while,
Right.
right? If you have something on the agenda and the rest of the council can't get the information on it,
Right.
it's really trying to, whether it's a concern or a project or something like that. It's just nice to know it's just good to have all the council be 100% up to speed before they get here. So if they're going to vote on something, that it's actually something that they can get the background on. I was mentioning earlier, Twyla, could you actually just touch base on the items that are in the consent agenda? Because we actually rolled through those pretty quickly, and that's by design, correct?
Yes. Yep, the consent agenda will normally be all of your finances, money, payroll, that sort of thing. And those come from the school department and from our payroll people. And so we end up putting those on there as a routine. And then minutes are just a general routine. We put licenses on there pretty much. A brand new license, though, I think if it was a brand new one you haven't seen before, we probably put that down underneath. the orders, council resolutions and orders. But if it's a renewal, you're going to see those under the consent agenda. And we only put the construction over limits on there because we already had permission the first time around. For some
Those
of
are all routine, any type of project we have for DOT, we have to have those construction over limit permits. We get them even when they're doing work on 196. So those are just routine, and the contracts are never different. It's just a different description of what's going on.
And those are the same thing. If you read through them, if you need more information, just all you need to do is actually ask, and I'm sure any information, because some of the stuff, I mean, for tonight, you probably wouldn't know a whole lot about the bridge projects. Right. I mean, but on the other hand, Diane could actually bring anybody up to speed pretty quickly.
We put that original memo that we got a few months ago on the bridge project. I had Twyla put that in the packet so that they'd have a little bit more information on it. Yeah. And then the disbursement, the treasurer's warrants, we have to do that annually, no matter what. Even if the council hasn't changed, we still have to do it annually. And the wording never changes in it other than the names of the council, so that's another routine.
You'll see things like road postings done annually, and other items that, if they're on the consent agenda, the chances are that they're just a routine renewal thing.
Something that's already been passed year after year by council with no changes, there's no sense in putting it under orders. It's just another routine. But if there's something brand new or something totally different or a big change, it's always going to go under the orders.
And going through the idea of the other business, we'll talk about that, because that's one of the things that we'll talk about after, about the idea of the committees. But executive session, Stan's touched on it a little bit. Typically, we put them in order at the end of the meeting, but there will be times where we actually will move them to the front. And usually that's if we actually have Dan here and we're paying him by the hour. Mm-hmm. Instead of waiting instead of waiting 3 hours to go in for a 10-minute conversation, it's much easier just to get them in initially. I got to be honest with you, though, we just got to be very careful on that. Roger Bickford would be one of the people that'll tell you front, I didn't come here at 7 to sit here and wait for you guys to come out at 7:30 out of executive session. You mean, so we got to be really careful about the idea of, and executive sessions sometimes can go quite lengthy. There's a lot of information you're trying to understand. You're asking the questions. So it's always at the end, but it is one of those things where that is an item. Sometimes it gets moved around a little bit in the agenda, and usually it's done strictly if we have information. Or another thing that may happen is if we actually have a committee, or if we're bringing on a new member, and we want to actually vent that out, the application ahead of time, we can get to an executive session and actually talk about the application if someone has any concerns prior to actually, approving a new member. Don, you have anything to add to that? Because I know you actually are pretty involved with going through a lot of the working rules last time too. But
not anything new.
Yeah, pretty much the same. But yeah, definitely worthwhile looking at it. We stick the new items at the end because it's really trying to. You're going to find a lot of people come in that they're nervous like everybody else is. You know what I mean? So they don't know really where to fit in, and some of the new items you'll find are pretty unique. You know what I mean? So it's at the end of the meeting. Sometimes it's easier to address those. But take a look at the meeting rules, and if there's any changes or anything. Don, you'll be gone next meeting, right? So
I will.
You'll wait the first one in January.
I'll be gone in about 5 minutes.
I know you will. As soon as we get.
I have to go.
You got to go. Understandable. All right. So let's move it on. So the idea of working rules. So recommendation is, Don, do you want to wait to get back for us to approve those? I guess that was.
Yeah, I think
Okay, so you'll be back first meeting in January? Second meeting in January?
Well, I'm missing the first one by about 24 hours.
Okay. So I would say the same thing
as
far as
the rule. I won't propose any changes to the rules. You could do them next meeting.
Okay, we can do that one. The committee assignments, they're out there listed. I know that a couple of people have actually sent in some recommendations of what they'd want. I'd just throw it out there for the rest of the council to kind of look at them. The idea of sitting on one and maybe another second one as a backup is pretty good. To be real aggressive and do a bunch of them is challenging, because if you start looking at the meetings, you could actually be meeting out really quick. And these are kind of important because we really want to have the heartbeat of what the committees are doing. So at this point of every meeting, we'd actually be getting some type of response. And, it can actually be as easy as the idea if you don't make the meeting to say you just didn't make the meeting, or just, reach out to the person that department or that committee.
A word of caution, though. I heard something in the emails that came back to me, because I sent out some stuff, but I hope everybody understands the role as liaison, not committee member.
Yeah.
And that means, to me, it means sit there and shut up and listen and talk, speak when spoken to, pretty much. Because if you get too involved, then they want to make you part of the committee or want you out of there, one of the two.
It's basically, it's our information on to report back to the council what's happening in that committee. So, I mean, like Don said, it's not, so to speak, to be knee-deep in it, but more the idea of come back to the committee, and if we see there's something we can help with or whatever, to bring it forward and try to help them out. With that being said, I think pretty much get Don out of here because I know he has to go to the airport after this. We got to feel bad for him. He's only going to Hawaii for a month,
Only a month.
Yeah, so
Poor guy.
Actually,
guy,
my wife is making a liar out of me because I told her I'd be home a little after 8. She said, no, you won't.
yeah, that's difficult. All right.
See, they had snow in Hawaii, just let you know.
Yeah, a lot of it.
They did.
Huh? Yeah.
They did. They had snow in Hawaii.
Oh, I know. In the mountains, yeah.
Yeah.
But they have
A little bit of
14,000
Maine there.
foot peaks up there.
Remember when they had that threat that there was an incoming missile into Hawaii and everybody was hiding in the basements? Don was there for that.
I was there at 8 o'clock that morning walking down the sidewalk. Yes, I realized.
So it's not all fun and games. Okay, anything else on this that you feel, I mean, there's some other stuff I want to do. Don, if you want to take off, you can.
I do. I really
No.
gotta get out of here.
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I
and it's
appreciate
stuff that you've already gone through, so it's not a big deal.
everybody's
Safe
stuff
travels,
tonight.
okay?
Be safe, Joy. Be safe.
Are you going to webinar any of the LDC meetings or any of that type of stuff? or-
Yeah, I'm gonna listen to it.
Good.
It's on tomorrow night, so I'll be watching the next day. I'll be on a plane tomorrow, so you can't watch it.
Can't you do all this stuff on the plane now? Can't you get like Wi-Fi and
I
everything?
haven't figured it out yet.
Safe travels, Don. Enjoy.
Okay.
Merry Christmas, Don.
Yes.
See you in a
Be careful.
month.
Yeah, be safe.
Thanks.
One of the things that
Meli Kalikimaka, right? Isn't that what they
Yes.
said?
Very much so.
another thing that we've done in the past, and it's been hard to get people to actually do it, but I think it's really important, is the idea of actually doing a town tour. I'd love to do that on a Saturday. I'm not sure what your folks' Saturday's agendas are, if you're available or not. Pretty much what it would be is we'd actually come in here on an early morning Saturday, and Diane would actually, if Diane is available to do it, take us on a tour of the town, meaning department heads to be around, would actually get a tour of the town office, see what happens, where we're at, go to the different fire departments, go to solid waste, go down to the sewer department,
Sounds fun.
and pretty much see what we're dealing with and get a good handle on some of the good things that happen and some of the constraints that we have that actually we're going to try to improve. So I think it's good. I think it's kind of a good team building type of event where you can go in and at least get an idea. Diane, how long in the past? I mean, usually what, 3 or 4 hours usually it takes probably to do it, or should we actually even plan for more time than that, or it really all depends.
I would say half a day.
Half a day to do it right.
If you're going to do all of them. I don't know that you're going to want to do them all in one day.
What's the thought?
You could really get caught up in one department, and then you've got a department head sitting in another department. I think that's what happened the last time, that you spend a lot of time in one department, and you've got a department head tied up on a Saturday waiting for you to get to their facility.
Yeah.
So
Couple of weekends?
yeah.
You think? Split it
How
up.
about designing it with an agenda, right, with a schedule? Right,
Try to
so-
stick to it.
And then you stick to it, right?
Exactly.
And you have to
Yeah.
stick to it, right?
You've got
It's
to,
a-
because if you're going to tie up department heads on a weekend,
Yeah, you
sit there and wait for you.
that's not what
No.
we want to do.
And the other
right?
thing too is you might want to wait till we start the budget, because there might be some capital items on the budget that they can show you what they're talking about at their department.
But that may not be till later on, towards spring though, right? I mean, to that level. I know Harry was talking about the capital improvement plan, reading through it and stuff. I mean, but, and what's the flavor of the council? I mean, to me, December's pretty much off this point anyways. Everybody's gonna be crazy. So coming into January, and if there's 2 weekends, or whether you want to do them back to back, or if, do you want to wait later, or would you rather do it earlier? I mean, get it done in January, just to go have the tour and then.
Well, I mean, you don't want the weather to restrict what you can see. I mean, I don't know if there's anything outside, exposed,
Right.
that we
Yeah.
should see that we might not be able to.
There's a lot of
but-
work that's being done over at the wastewater treatment plant, and I would not think you would want to go over there in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And even Public Works, you're going to be subject to the weather too, whether you see anything or not, so. I almost think the spring would be better,
Yeah.
Vern,
Yeah.
when we're doing the budget.
Well, that's fine. I
And
mean,
you
I have
can-
no problem. I just want to make sure.
I
the
think so
council-
too. I think the springtime would be.
Yeah.
We've had some times in the past year that it was snowing. And we
Oh,
kind of
no,
drive
don't
around
get me
in this
wrong.
Yeah,
van
I
in
mean,
a
yeah.
snowstorm.
Yeah, and
I'm
I don't
walking
like
around
being
Public
cold.
Works, and that's fine. I mean, I have no problem. I just want to make sure, because it's just, during some of the discussions, I know there was questions that were brought up that, I mean, just understanding what the makeup of the town is, I mean, and, something that, one of the questions were asked about the idea on the candidate night, about the idea of the services that we provide, you mean? And sometimes it's really hard to understand what those services are, or what the ones that are mandated that we have to, you mean? And I'm not sure if that's a workshop type of night where you guys want to get together and come up with some questions, and if we get them ahead of time, we can have Diane or the appropriate people actually respond. And the hardest thing is a counselor, if a citizen comes up and asks you a question, I mean, and you're not going to have all the answers. I mean, it's easy to say that you don't, and that you get
Just
back
be truthful, right?
and get back to them. But I mean, some of the services that we provide in town, and there's only a couple that I know coming in the budget that actually is going to be probably before budget, is the idea of like the ambulance service and some of that stuff. That'd be nice to really get them up to speed on, and I'm not sure what the best way to do that is like a workshop, or the idea of, it's hard to talk about it in a regular meeting a lot of times and
Right.
get it spread out. I mean, maybe, so there's with our ambulance service, there's actually been is that coming up for the
Some
next
issues
budget
with
still,
ambulance
right? I mean, that's really not going to be really asked upon us to our next budget season, right?
Right.
That difference.
With this next budget that we're working on, they're going to ask for that
Yeah.
$90,000 increase
Yeah.
or more.
One more, but it'd be nice to us to actually get some handle around it a little bit ahead of time. And maybe, I don't know, Diane, what you think is it best to have a workshop and maybe have two chiefs come in and actually kind of give a rundown of where we're at and what we're thinking, and because unfortunately, moving into this next year, we don't have a lot of cards to play. I mean, unfortunately, it's a service that isn't actually a mandated service. It's not a service that the state requires us to do, but I think it's a service that we owe to our citizens that actually have, as the ambulance shows up if there's a concern. But I think it'd be nice to get us up on speed. We could spend almost a whole night just talking about where we were, where we are, and where we're going with that. And there's going to be some other questions asked upon the council as in this next year of, how do we actually improve upon that, or actually have a safeguard of, making that, if something was to happen in that service, how, what's our backup? So it's going to be more trying all the time. So there's some things, and I guess as a council, is there?
I think a workshop would be a good idea, and get the chiefs in here to talk about the issues and the problems.
Yeah.
It should include Bowden too,
Bowden, yeah.
because they're right along with us.
Yeah. Yeah, and if Bowden actually doesn't go along with us, that means it costs us more money, because there's a lot of money, there's a lot of factors involved in how this actually plays out, and there's some history that just really needs to be brought forward to make sure that we know where we're at with it. And it'd be nice. What my concern is typically, and everybody looks at budget seasons different. I don't believe budget season is the time to make decisions on how to change policy. I think you actually figure that out ahead of time. Then when you get into the budget season, you just figure out your budget for it. I give you a perfect example. It's like, solid waste. I mean, it's really hard in the middle of budget season to revamp how we run our solid waste. It's much easier to do it ahead of time. And the same thing with this ambulance. It's going to be a hot topic. So it's easier to get a lot of this stuff out of the way. When do you plan on actually starting some of the initial budget?
It won't be till probably mid-January.
Mid-January, but it is.
We
coming
won't
up.
get it complete for council to review till, I tip, not till March, probably the second week in March.
Yeah. So as long as we do some of these workshops in January, February, as far as like on the EMS type stuff,
Yeah, I really don't know what
That's something that's
You're not gonna be able to do anything with that this year.
No, but it
And
just,
whatever increase they're gonna come in with, you're
Yes.
pretty much gonna have to,
as I said, we don't have many cards to play. No, so, but yeah, it's good
No.
for someone to actually at least have the information on that, you know.
Is that something we could have them come in, like, before we all meet?
Well,
Like, if we just get here at 6 instead
Yeah,
of
we can
7,
do a
we can
work-
just.
We do a workshop
Yeah.
prior to the.
Yeah,
Prior.
I mean,
That
we
was gonna be
had
my
30
question.
minutes to kick it off, yeah.
what's your preferences? Is everybody somewhat available? I mean, to me, it's nice to incorporate all on the same night. So if we're gonna do a workshop, we actually just make an agenda, we stick to it. It's,
Yeah.
we do 1 hour, and if we have to expand it from there, we do it a different night. I mean, is that, I mean, not for the budget part of it, but I mean, as far as this other
For
type
workshops.
workshop.
Yeah, I
That
think to
would
get
be
a handle
preferred.
on the issues, I think a workshop prior to our meeting is a good idea.
It'll keep you focused too, right? So if your workshop starts at 6, you got to 10 of,
Yep.
and then to your point, if we need to, we line up another one, but it keeps you driven too, right? Keeps you focused on,
Right.
what you're trying to accomplish. And
I guess that what we can do is, I mean, as counselors, if there's any area of the town that you actually just have a mystery about and don't really have a good grip on, and like to have more information, we can actually handle that in a couple different ways. We can give you, or we can do a workshop on it and have the department head come in, or, there's just a lot of ways that we can actually get that information out. But I guess my main point is I don't want you as a counselor to actually not have any information you need to actually understand on the services we provide, or.
Would it make sense just to do like once a month until spring? I mean, if we had workshop hour before on a Tuesday, we had Public Works, the EMT, a couple of these things that we were up to date.
Yeah,
Budget comes through,
I
and
see
then we do a
that,
quick
and I
field
agree
trip.
with that, but I think that if it's what I think is going on with the ambulance, I think it's gonna take a lot of time to get a handle on what's going on, and you're gonna hear from the PD, you're gonna hear from fire, you're gonna hear from EMS. And you might hear from people outside, like you said, Bowden or whoever. So to do that in an hour, I don't think.
I think just to get the initial groundwork of where we're at, and then from there, if the council wants more discussion, we can actually pull it in. You're absolutely right, though. I mean,
The alternative is we could do, a separate night, like, the alternating Tuesday in between when we have meetings.
I
That way
think that's a
we
good
can go as
idea.
long as we want to do. If we want to do 2 hours, we're not like, we have to stop because our meeting is right now. So
Right.
it might be best for the ambulance one in particular, because that's so many people that want to speak onto that
Yeah, I
subject.
think that's a
so.
good idea.
Because I usually rope off, I mean, especially during budget season, I usually rope off all my Tuesdays just thinking they're council related, you know what I mean? Because so I mean, I'm not sure, I guess I'll wait and get some feedback from you folks, and then we can have Diane maybe arrange for the workshops we need. I just know there was a lot of questions that were brought up sometimes during the candidate night, and it's nice.
Because I know,
yeah.
I mean, I know the ambulance in this town has morphed over the years that I've been here from where we would give them, $500 maybe at town meeting. Somebody would go up and they would say, can we have $500? And the town would argue for an hour, and we'd end up giving them maybe $350 or whatever. And then now it's gone to,
Yeah, we actually.
we haven't given that, did we give them $200,000?
Yeah, we actually.
$200,000.
And it's going to go up again. And the hardest thing is when we were approached last time with this decision, it was, if we don't get this, we're done, basically, right? It was a make or break.
Fold.
It's either you actually help us work for your SIDS, or it's gone away. And at that point in time, we actually did research as a council. We did that due diligence. We looked at, other outside entities to be able to do it. We had people come in, and really there was no one else that actually was willing to actually sign up for any amount of money, saying that if you call, we're going to come.
Yeah, we put out a whole
Well,
proposals to them
United,
and,
What's that?
open
United
bidding
was
and-
going to.
Did they?
It was pricey.
Yeah,
I
we
think
did,
it was more
no,
expensive
no, it
than-
wasn't.
Was
No,
it?
it wasn't. But we did not want to wait the amount of time for an ambulance to come from
Right, they
where.
were just going to provide it
That's
from
what,
there,
that's what
so
the
that
issue
an
was,
issue
but
that
no, they were,
They weren't going to run anything from Lisbon here. There was
Yeah.
going to be,
no, we
wait
did a
for
request for
ambulance from
proposal
Lewiston.
and United put one in.
But was that per capita, or was it actually per call?
No, I don't think, I'm thinking
I can't
they
remember.
were
There was
not
a set
gonna,
dollar amount on it, but
there wasn't much.
yeah.
And I think they were even going to set an ambulance somewhere here in Lisbon,
That's even changed, because Lisbon now is actually thinking about putting another unit on to help them.
United, to put an ambulance over.
They're already keeping one
I know.
at United.
Yeah.
One of our ambulances is stationed at United. So
And the other thing is because they're a private entity, we can't control the administration of it. So if it's poorly run,
We have 2 people on the board,
Yeah.
but when you look at their bylaws, they don't really have much say.
It's tough to do anything if you're on the board, though.
Yeah. So there's a lot of discussion, and I think just the idea of getting everybody up to speed where we're at right now.
Yeah.
And, I think internally, I think there's been discussion about how do we, if you just watch the news, a lot of communities now are trying to figure out how they actually kind of control that from within. But the downfall is everything we do comes with a dollar value, right? So the idea of, when we spent the 200+ thousand, it was actually more than that, wasn't it close to 300,000 that we're paying now? To actually do it, the alternative is not have the service, which is very challenging.
Yeah, but
And now the idea of the increase again, it's one of those things where how do you go about it?
And we don't even we haven't calculated the dollar figure for how much we support that ambulance. When
Right.
the police go there, as you know, because you used to go, and when the fire department goes there, because there's no ambulance in town to serve us, so they're first responders, they're tending to the patient until an ambulance from either Topsom, Durham, Gardner,
Freeport.
Auburn gets here. So that's tying up our employees, so it's much more than what we're paying for a stipend that it costs the town. So,
That's
and I think,
dispatching,
at this point, and we've had these discussions, we just need to look, does it make sense for us to start our own?
I think
No?
we need a true problem statement from us. What's the true problem statement with this service, right?
Yeah.
And then drive it from there, right? Peel it back.
Yep.
Where does it bring us, right? We may find that you have to find another alternative because they're just not going to get any better because they don't have the capability to, right? To your point, if you can't control how they manage it, or
They're private. Like you said,
Right.
the bylaws.
and if they're private, they may price themselves right out of Lisbon, right?
Just to be fair, they have been very open. I mean, we actually do get the reports as counselors of what their financials and their run reports. So I mean, it's just one of those things. They are running into a volunteer or personnel issue like everybody else. I mean, I was amazed the idea that they're talking about dollar values, what they could pay. I mean, for EMS and for first responders and people that actually are paramedics. And, there was some discussions that people flipping burgers at McDonald's were getting base salary was more than a person coming to save your life. I mean, which is scary. I mean, so they are working with all the same concerns and the rest of the world is right now. And that's what's driving a lot of the price increase, I think, is the idea of what they need to actually have on hand to actually pay their personnel to keep them on staff. So, I mean, there's a lot to it. I just think we need to actually, it's better to get that stuff out before we get to budget season, just so we have a good handle on it and not hashing it out in the middle of a budget season. The more information we get out front, the more we can decide prior going into the budget, and the much easier the budget's going to be for Diane to actually present, so there's no big questions looming, that's just one of many things that we really need to get up to speed on is, I don't know, Diane, how do we go about the idea of the personnel as far as for the missing personnel in town? I mean, because that's going to be an issue coming up in this year's budget too, the idea of replacing our staffing levels. And I know we have that study going on, right?
Yep.
Is that underway already as far as for?
I'm doing the best I can on it with very limited help.
Yeah.
So
Now, is
I'm
that something you're trying to do
working on
with
that.
it?
There's a lot of information I have to gather for them, and I sent them a bunch today, but
Yep.
I'm up against the liens right now and the foreclosures. I'm doing all of that as well.
Yeah. So the company that you've hired to actually put the report together, actually, basically, you do the report, they put it together, right?
No, they have to get they have to know our makeup. They got to know what our makeup of all our departments are. They need to know what, they need to know a lot of information, our job descriptions, pay scales if we have any, and I sent them those today. They need to know areas where we're having a hard time recruiting. They're not going to know that unless I tell them.
Absolutely, yeah. They have to get the information.
They have to get that. And then there's a bunch of employee information that I got to get for them as well. I've done probably 2/3 of it right now, but there's more I've got to do.
So coming in this budget, I mean, the downfall of Lisbon is when we went through a recession, we actually cut back a lot of personnel. I mean, since then the town's grown, and we really haven't done our due diligence in keeping up with the staff. I mean, a prime example, Diane's all by herself in the office right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't have an assistant, which we don't have anything budgeted for that at this point in time. The front staff is lean. So, I mean, I think it's almost another workshop, actually. I'm not sure if we do it before or after we get this report.
Let's wait for the report.
Wait to report. When do you think we'll get it, though?
I told them I wanted to have it by mid-February.
Yeah. As long as we can do it.
Because if we're going to implement any part of it, it needs to go into the budget.
Yeah.
So.
The question I guess I have is some of the positions, do we need to try to fill those prior to that? I mean, can you actually go through the rest of this year and get ready for budget season without an assistant in your office? I mean,
Not really, no.
Not really. So I think we do need to, even prior to that, actually find out, what we're missing. I mean, because, Diane's having a hard time right now putting this report because basically you're doing everything in your office. You don't have an assistant.
Right.
You have one hired though, right? The HR?
The HR, but it's just going to be HR. It's not going to be my assistant.
Oh.
And what Megan did was she was HR, she was my administrative assistant, plus she was my deputy tax collector and treasurer. So she did all the liens, and so now I'm working on them, and Kayla, but I'm the only one that's certified. Nobody else is certified, so I know the process and the legalities of it, and I tell you got to be right on it.
So there's two things we're missing.
So,
one is
some of that's going to be delegated, but there's like all the town insurances. There's the computer stuff. Even though we have Burgess, but there's still a lot of stuff that I have to do. I have to manage them and get them and work with them to get the replacements and get new people onboarded. And I need an assistant.
So we did an HR study with it that actually went through not all the personnel, 30 some of the personnel, and asked about the concerns and how they felt about working in Lisbon. And we got a report on that, which I think would be interesting some night in executive session to pull those out, right? Because we'd have to be in executive session to go through the report, so you all could see what that report brought forward. One of the ones is a lot of people actually felt that they were wearing multiple hats, more so than they were hired for, and that's only because we're lack of staff. And so I think there's two things we got to deal with. One is the idea of getting this report, and the report basically is going to tell us of a municipality our size, how many people we should have work in the front desk, how many personnel we should have in finance. It's a job analysis position, so we can actually see if we're properly staffed, and if we're not, what do we need to do. So come the budget season, there may be some money that we may have to allocate to try to get that up where it's supposed to be. But in the meantime, we already know we're missing holes. So I think we need to figure out how we're going to do that as a council to fill those positions, because right now they're not budgeted into the budget that we're working on. But I believe there is possible ways that we can actually allocate money to actually fill those positions if needed. Diane, is that true? Or?
We could probably find some.
Yeah, but it is going to be the council working together and understanding those holes and actually fixing the immediate problem.
Yeah.
And then long-term wise, we got a wage study and a job description. So I think
we still have a lot of positions that we're unable to fill.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy filling them.
No, it's not.
And so that's where I think I can pull money from, because we've had vacant positions for quite a while here that we can't get anybody to apply for.
I mean,
but everybody's facing it.
Yep. We face the same thing, and by facing that, we did go to multiple hats, right? For reasons due to you just can't get what you need, right? And look at what that originally cost would have been, and to your point, you can move it, right? If you're looking to fill a spot that that no one's applying for, it's already in the budget.
Yeah.
Because if someone took it, the money's already there.
Right.
So if no one's applying for that, you can reallocate that, and then just eliminate that rec, right?
The problem is
I mean,
someone else is still going to do that position that actually is missing, right?
And,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, that,
and
it'll give
we're
you,
all-
it'll free up the money so that you could do something this year, but you still need to have it in the budget for next year, because hopefully someday somebody will apply for that position.
Yeah.
So Diane, is it worthwhile that you actually come up with a list of not wishes, but the idea of what we actually need? Because, I mean, we definitely can't be short-staffed going into the budget season and actually not have the information we need to move forward. So is it worthwhile to, and does the council agree to actually get a list of the ones that we should try to fill immediately? And do we want to do that as a workshop some night that you can actually just present that? I mean, I think a workshop would be better than actually a council meeting. Would you agree, or?
You mean vacancies?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, just
So
stop
I
in.
guess what are you trying to, so the only one that I know of that we don't have budgeted would be somebody for some help for me.
Help for you.
Everything else is budgeted, we just can't get anybody to apply for
Is the
them.
problem that we're not paying enough? I mean, why aren't we getting applicants?
That's a big part of it,
Underpaying
which
for
is
the
this
position.
wage study's gonna prove
So that's
that.
why we need that, yes. If you're
Right.
paying under the market, you're just not going to be able to
Yep.
find anyone.
So what would be the appropriate way to actually try to take care of the person that, for your office? I mean, is that something that we
Come
should?
up with a job, well, I can come up with a job description and post it and see what happens.
Yeah, and now, would you actually just, I mean, dollar-wise, you would actually have to just present to council where you'd be pulling the funds from? Different.
Yeah, I would have, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how would you want to present that to us? Is that something you wanted to do in a council meeting or a workshop, or, I guess,
Just at a council meeting's
just a
fine.
council meeting?
Yeah, but it's not gonna happen right off.
No, I realize. But without that person, someone being there, it's probably going to only get worse. I mean, that's
I know,
that's
I
the
know,
hardest
but-
thing. I mean, so.
Only so much I can do right now.
But I know that you mentioned that you're only certified, people can do certain things, like, I think you said liens and things like that.
Yeah, so in other words, I really have to oversee that now because I don't have the staff that is trained to do it and do it right. You know, I mean, do it and not miss any steps. And it takes probably 3 years for somebody to get certified. And Megan was certified. We were working towards another person in the office getting certified, and that person left. Kayla is starting the process, but we've got all new staff now, so there's just nobody certified.
So there's nobody that you can pull from Public Works or another department
No.
and say, guess what, you're not working for me for,
I got to be honest with
However
you,
long.
through the study for people
Yeah.
leaving here, that was one of the biggest
Yeah.
concerns, is
No.
the idea of I was hired for this,
Right.
I get paid for this, now you're asking me to do this, this, and this, and I can now leave and go to Brunswick, get paid more for just doing this job, so why would I stay?
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
They're leaving and they're getting paid more money for doing less.
So it's really hard to
That's
actually
what's
tag on those
happening.
hats, I mean, so that was my question, I mean, how about even, and again, we can do this in a different setting, but, I mean, even like temp help, as far as you're helping you in your office, I mean, is that even, I mean, is those services, is that worthwhile? I mean, is that even
It's just gonna be very expensive. I mean, that's, temp help is temp help and you're gonna pay a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I mean, you don't want it temporary, do you?
no, we don't, but we're trying to fix a problem.
No, I
that-
know, but
I mean, the problem is we're kind of hearing that we can't get the information to solve a problem because we have a problem. So I mean, how do we overcome that, right? I mean, if part of the problem is you don't have the time in your office to actually fulfill the stuff that's going to fix it,
Yep.
how do we jump that hurdle? And we're
Well, I'm
already in
hoping
December,
in
you
a
know.
couple of weeks when my new HR director gets here, she's gonna help me with that, to get that information.
so you just gotta hang on.
Gotta hang on.
Yeah.
Because you bring a temp in, they're not gonna know the Munis system.
No,
And they might screw up the works more than.
And they're not gonna know the makeup. I mean, you need to have somebody that understands it, and,
I totally agree. I just want to make sure that when we come into January and start going through the budget process, that, you know, we want to make sure we have all the resources we have so we can get.
What is the rate
information.
of pay that you would pay assistant? Like, what is that going rate?
I don't know, I haven't even looked at those.
It was always
But
tied on to other jobs, so it was
Yeah.
actually, you know, you get this for this and this for this, and it adds up. You know what I
Oh,
mean? But still,
so when Megan was my assistant, she was also the HR director and also my deputy tax collector and treasurer. She wore all those hats.
she
And we
get
were
paid,
trying to
yeah.
take some of those away and train other people, but those people she was training got done, so. It's a vicious cycle, you gotta keep starting over, so now there's,
I think it'd be good for the council some night, and I'll leave it up to council to decide, and we can do an executive session, because it'd be nice to actually, we spend pretty good money to get that HR report, so it'd be nice to actually have the council look at it, and it's something we can't share. It's something we'd have to do an executive session, read through it, all the business people, so you get a pretty good idea of what you're reading, and actually get an idea of what we're trying to repair. And the problem is it's kind of like, you get a broken down car, but you got to actually use your car every day to still get to work, so you never have a chance to fix it. You know what I mean? So it's eventually you got to just bite the bullet and fix it. You mean, and how that is, it doesn't come without spending money.
Did that study that looked at everything we're missing and what we
It's
need?
going to look at everything.
The one that's underway. There was one we did before that was internally, like, survey of employees to see how they felt about their jobs in the town.
Yeah.
And,
This is going to be a complete
there's a
wage
separate
study.
wage study that we're doing that's
And it's going to look
underway.
at all kinds of metrics in the public and in the private.
A lot of our employees were concerned about the idea of just, there's a lot of carrots out there now, right? With every community, not just paying more, but actually sign-on bonuses, especially in our police department. There's police departments around that are offering, $4 or $5 more an hour than we're paying, plus sign-on bonuses, plus a lot of promises. But, I think with us doing a wage study, at least it's showing us a commitment to the idea of understanding that, and maybe not be able to fix the problem overnight, but yet at least we'll understand it, and we'll be actually, when we go to budget season, we can actually make a recommendation based on logical information and not just what we feel is right or wrong. And the same thing with our town. We've grown a lot. I mean, our population has grown. We do a lot more. Our town office staff has not really grown with it. So the idea of having understanding for a population our size, what the proper staffing ought to be. I mean, what positions it ought to be. We've been doing something so long the same way that, it may not be the right way anymore. Maybe it is, but yet, it's hard to know that until you get an outside person to come in and say, this is where you really ought to be. And it's not going to give all the answers, but at least as a council, to make decisions, we'll be able to base our decisions on something other than our opinion,
And I have a question. The company that you're working with to do the survey, could they help you maybe identify what it would cost to, for an assistant position if you give them a job description?
Yeah,
Because I think that would be helpful for the council to know what's this going to cost if we're going to look at going forward in the budget. What are we going to be adding as a budget item? And just to, work with them maybe to get a
Yeah, I
cost
planned on
estimate.
doing that anyway, inserting that type of position in there. Just
I'd certainly like to know, for decision making, what does it cost?
Yeah, no, I planned on doing that.
I mean, I think certainly we know you need some help there. It's not a one-person job to do all those tasks.
I mean, one of the things that we do is we usually go into budget season with goals, right? The goals, what's the flavor of the council? Are we actually trying to keep the budget at, level, or, what type of increase can we stomach? I mean, this year going into the budget, last year there was a deduction. This year going in, we know just for the employees and the wage study and the ambulance service, there's just a lot of moving parts that it's been very challenging to actually not have some type of increase. But the more information we have initially, we can have better decisions on the budget of where those increases will be and how we sell them, right? I think it was mentioned before, an increase is easy if you can prove to people that, what it is.
It's warranted.
It's warranted. I mean, it's kind of like the ambulance. I mean, some people may say that's ridiculous, but I mean, if you have a loved one laying on the ground and you need someone there, that $90,000 doesn't really mean a whole lot. I mean, so it's one of those things where, we have to look at that. I think the earlier we do it, the better we are. I think the idea of the position for you, Diane, I mean, I know it's more work, but I think we need to try to fill that as quickly as possible, because that's only going to allow you to be able to do more to try to move the process forward. So I'm not sure how we do that quicker, and I'm not going to, try to understand where you're at with it.
I can't take on any more until after the 19th, because that's my drop dead lines for liens, sewer foreclosures, and tax foreclosures.
Well, I guess we'll leave it up to you to determine, but sometimes it's nice to have that help.
I'm struggling with that right now.
But we're in a community that actually things are good, right? I mean, we've sold a lot of new homes in town. I mean, budget last year was actually, we had record revenues, right, Diane, last year? From excise tax.
I think we're going to see it this year too.
So we're doing good things. So it's not like we're actually in a recession. We're actually, we don't actually have an increase of funds. It's just a matter of how do we do it smart, and how do we actually sell it to the community that we're doing the right things.
And where you have a healthy fund balance, that we can take a good amount from to do our capital needs again this year.
So we're working in the right direction. It's just, I just think the more information we get ahead of it, the better the budget season will go, and the less questions that beat up she'll get in aisle 4 at the Food City. But again, I guess we'll wrap it up there, just unless someone has any questions. So I guess the homework for the council tonight is look at the committees. You know, pick one primary one that you really love to serve on or have an interest in, and maybe a second or a third one, just in case some overlap. Take a look at the working rules, just kind of see what you think, so we can improve those maybe at the next meeting. I mean, if Dawn's all good with it, we can look at them and just make sure those get that out of the way. And then we can try to, you know, maybe come up with a little better idea of what a, you know, workshop agenda would look like, schedule. We could look at the calendars and kind of, you know, look at it. And again, we got to be somewhat sensitive to even like Diane's ideas where, you know, we don't want to put a lot of workshops if she's already doesn't have time to be here during the day already. So, you know, be somewhat sensitive to what we can get done. So are we better just wait and do basically workshop, just wait till like the end of January at this point in time, Diane? Or,
I would.
yeah, just to get everybody's feet on the ground and get you where you need to be. Any other questions, council, at all? Or you're gonna get your feet wet really quick, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, but it's there's a lot of stuff going on. So, you know, it's really up to us to make it work and try to support the town and people that run it. So, good deal. Take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second. So do we kill this here?
All in favor?
6-0.
We all good?
Yep.
Violet, did we do everything we were supposed to do?
Looks good to me.
The Robert's Rules, years ago I remember I got a little book from you on Robert's Rules. Do you still have those?
I do, yeah, you can buy those.
You can buy them?
Yeah, 10, 15 bucks, not much.
Yeah.
Or you can,
It's online probably now too.
doesn't, let's look into see what MMA has.
Yeah, it'd be good.
It's a little
It's
pamphlet.
interesting reading.
I have a budget. Do we each have our own separate budget?
Hold on, we've got
Reach in your pocket and see
That's
what
my
you got.
budget?
I told the kids I'd see them in the morning.
All right, guys.
Hey, thank you very much.